Right now, let's swing on with Bobby Day and his very, very big hit national record of Rockin' Robin. Here it is.
We humans have a deep connection with music. Music is an integral part of our societies, our languages, and our daily lives. Music is commonly defined as an art form that manipulates the pitch, rhythm, and dynamics of sound as a means of expression and communication. The creation, performance, significance, and even the definition of music vary according to culture and social context. Music ranges from strictly organized compositions to improvisational pieces. Music can be divided into genres and subgenres, although the dividing lines and relationships between music genres are often subtle, sometimes open to individual interpretation, and occasionally controversial. But what really is the human obsession with music? Why do we care so much for it? The answer is quite obvious. We like music because it makes us feel good. In 2001, neuroscientist Anne Blood and Robert Zator at McGill University in Montreal used magnetic resonance imaging to show that people listening to pleasurable music had activated brain regions called the limbic and paralimbic areas, which are connected to euphoric reward responses like those we experience from sex, good food, and addictive drugs. Those rewards come from a gush of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. But why? It's easy enough to understand why sex and food are rewarded with a dopamine rush. This makes us want more, and so contributes to our survival and propagation. Why would a sequence of sounds with no obvious survival value do the same thing? The current favorite theory among scientists who study music cognition, or how we process music mentally, dates back to 1956, when philosopher and composer Leonard Mayer suggested that emotion in music is all about what we expect and whether or not we get it. Mayer drew on earlier psychological theories of emotion, which proposed that emotion arises when we're unable to satisfy some desire. That, as you might imagine, creates frustration or anger. But if we then find what we're looking for, the payoff is all the sweeter. This, Mayer argued, is what music does too. It sets up sonic patterns and irregularities that tempt us to make unconscious predictions about what's coming next. If we're right, the brain gives itself a little reward, a surge of dopamine. The constant dance between expectation and outcome thus enlivens the brain with a pleasurable play of emotions. Why should we care whether our musical expectations are right or not? It's not as if our life depended upon them. Ah, but perhaps they once did, says musicologist David Huron of Ohio State University. Making predictions about our environment, interpreting what we see and hear, say on the basis of only partial information, could have once been essential to our survival, and indeed still often is, for example when crossing a road. And involving the emotions in these anticipations could have been a smart idea. On the African savanna, our ancestors did not have the luxury of mulling over whether that screech was made by a harmless monkey or a predatory lion. By bypassing the logical brain and taking shortcuts to the primitive limbic circuits that control our emotions, the mental processing of sound could prompt a rush of adrenaline, a gut reaction that prepares us to get out of there anyway. We can't turn off this anticipatory instinct, nor its link to the emotions, even when we know that there's nothing life-threatening in a Mozart sonata. Nature's tendency to overreact provides a golden opportunity for musicians, says Huron. Composers can fashion passages that manage to provoke remarkably strong emotions using the most innocuous stimuli imaginable. All this can rationalize a great deal about why we feel emotions from particular musical phrases and performances. Mayer's ideas have received further support very recently from a brain scanning study by Zator and his colleagues, which showed that the rewards stimulated by music heard for the first time are particularly dependent on communication between emotion and logic circuits in the brain. But it's not the whole story. Our emotional response and attraction to music may be partially instinctual, but it is also conditioned by environmental factors. If we are hearing it alone or in a crowd, for example, or if we associate a particular piece with a past experience, good or bad. Underneath all these ideas is the fact that our musical tastes and preferences are highly influenced by our society, friends, and family. Emotion in music is culture-specific, as musical appreciation differs from one culture to another. Different cultures use different tunings. The scales of India and Indonesia don't match those of Western Europe. There's also the fact that preferences and attractions change over time as the musical environment changes. What we listen to now might be considered garbage a mere 20 or 30 years in the future. This much is true. Music plays a critical role in human development and understanding. As Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Without music, life would be a mistake."